Well, hello everyone. I'm Talon David. Actually, something we have in common. We both studied music, and during COVID, I just knew that music wasn't something that I could do in the world, and so started getting into voiceover because I had a home studio. And 5 years later, I've narrated over 140 audiobooks now. And it has become such a strange and impromptu career, but I love it. And I specialize mainly in sci-fi, fantasy, and like women's fiction, more on the clean side of that spectrum. But I do a lot of things. I've had the privilege to narrate most every genre, and I've done a couple memoirs before, or like self-help type books, but never one that has been more novel orientated. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
140.
Yeah, in almost 5 years, not quite five.
That is wild.
It came out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how did you end up in this? Like, how did you end up starting this business?
Sure. So, like I mentioned a little bit, I was in my senior year of Belmont University here in Nashville and was studying music, and of course not really allowed to study music because I couldn't sing in public and during COVID. And so I was like, okay, I want to release my own music. I have all of this art inside of me, but what can I do to actually be contributing to society around me right now? And
Mm.
voiceover came to mind, and we had a family friend that gave me some tips on demos, and then sent my demo to one of her contacts, and suddenly, like within that week, they had me contracted to do an audiobook. And so as soon as I got this manuscript, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to actually be doing something after so many, like a year and a half now of not feeling like I could do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I read the whole manuscript. It was a 330-page manuscript. I read the whole thing in a night. It
Oh,
took
oh, wow.
from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. I was reading this book. I was
Uh-huh.
just so excited. I hadn't felt that excited about something in a long time.
Are you comfortable
And
sharing what kind of book it was or what book it was? Like, are you?
yeah, it was just like contemporary women's fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe she's a Christian author, but writes just like a clean romance. And it was just like a delightfully wonderful book. And it also kind of foreshadowed what would happen later in my career, which was like this emphasis on accents and character voices. Because literally the first line of the whole book was a sentence in an Irish accent.
Yeah.
The first line, and it was integral to the whole story. Like, it had to be right.
No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah. And you know what? I got into that recording studio because that was actually recorded in a studio at that time. And I walked in and I realized that I felt prepared. I'd never
Mm-hmm.
done an audiobook in my life, but because I had like microphone technique, because I had breath control, because I had like an acting background as well with theater and being on stage, I was like, I just happened to have the exact balance of gall to be able to do this book. I know, but I just went for it. I sent that Irish accent, and I just had a blast. A blast. And I realized after that first session, we read for 4 hours, just straight for 4 hours. And I felt how that affected my voice, and was like, I could do this. Like, I want to do more of this. And then I made the decision, okay, I'm going to get on ACX. I'm going to get on all of these platforms. I made so many profiles that year. I don't even know where they are. So many. Yeah. So, and then ACX has been the most consistent. And I just found out recently that it really became the platform it did that year. So I just happened to get in like almost on the ground floor of ACX, and happened to have a voice that people liked, and it seemed to have the tone that was needed. And now I have a lot of repeat authors. That author that I did my first audiobook with, we're friends. She's also done an interview with me, and I have narrated all of her books since then. So it's created this wonderful little community of creative people, and it's so weird because I've never actually met any of them in person except one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 5 years of coworkers and colleagues. I'm like, you are just an email to me, but I love your work and I feel very close to you.
That's so amazing. And so people that are going to be listening to this, this is going to go out to musicians, music educators, artists, like things
Yeah,
like that. So, um I would love for you to talk just a little bit before we get more into, the process of you doing my book and all of that stuff. I'd
sure.
love to take a step back and talk about your family, your history with
Mm.
music. You won an award, a pretty significant music award at some point.
Oh yeah,
So
I did.
I would love for you to talk about that, because who knows who's out there listening that I love how you said I had the gall to be like, I can do this. And I know there are people out there right now that are, like, am I going to keep teaching? Am I going to keep doing this? And so maybe after listening to this, they might also be interested in audiobook narration, because as artists, musicians, we do sort of come to the table with a lot of the skills already that are needed to be an audiobook narrator. So yeah, let's talk about your history, your family, and your love of music.
Amazing. Well, I grew up in a musical household, so I really had no escape. I have always felt closer to music than I have speech. So it
Mm,
for me, I learned how best to communicate with people through like cadence, rhythm, beat. Like I kind of pace conversation based on like what's the proper pause, what's the rhythm of this, matching people's energy. All of it's such like it's like you're singing a duet or a big group song or something like music is kind of how I understand the world. And my parents background, you might remember this, but there was an amusement park in Nashville called Opryland,
mm-hmm.
and it was very music oriented. It was kind of like the Disney of the time, where a lot of entertainers would come and work there. And my parents met there. My mom was one of the dancer like theatrical performers, and my dad was one of the General Jackson guitarists and played professional guitar. And so they met there. I like to say I was born out of music. And
Mm.
yeah, and so I had all of these crazy influences. My dad was playing Journey and CCR and the Eagles, the Beatles, all that, while my mom was playing like Golden Age musical theater. So,
Just slightly different, but it's fine. Like,
so I was listening to Journey and then the Broadway cast album of Wicked back to back, and they were the same to me.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely the same. Steve Perry and Idina Menzel, my vocal inspirations. So, yeah, I went through school and quickly realized that I felt the most passionate about music. Started songwriting around 14 or 15, and then on a whim, because I was trying to get as much scholarship money as possible for for going to college,
Mm-hmm.
I just sent one of my songs through the songwriting competition because I was like, any bit helps. What can I use?
Yep.
And it happened to be through the Grammy Foundation and Music Cares, and it was a songwriting competition that was supposed to talk about like getting above the influence of drugs and alcohol and stuff. And I have never had a drug in my body, but I happen to have a song that could have been about that, just because it was about nostalgia, kind of being addicted to nostalgia and thinking about the past and thinking about what used to be and how that was
Mm-hmm.
more comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a druggy mindset. And
Yeah.
a little bit, it was such a learning experience on how much is transferable between our experiences, even though like the substance or the content might not be the same. So much of it is transferable. And so I ended
Mm.
up winning this dang songwriting competition and got to go to the Grammys that year. I didn't win a Grammy. I like to be specific. I didn't win a Grammy. I did win an award through the Grammy Foundation,
Mm.
which is very close.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah. It was what I needed, like now knowing where I am. I needed that to kind of give me a I don't know, a like kind of signal that I was relevant in the music industry, that I had something to say, that something could be heard from what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was worth pursuing. Because I like to think I'm kind of a practical person. And if it's not something that's communicating something to someone else, if it's just for me, then it's like, is that really worth spending this amount of time on? And I've had a lot of rejection since then. And so I'm so thankful for that moment of being like, wow, just out of nowhere, I won this award from the Grammys. And
Mm.
then I've been able to get through a lot of this stuff since then because it's like, okay, I'm kind of on a side road from music right now, but I have been given skills that allow me to do a job. This is like one of the only jobs I could do where I get to do music side by side and use the same exact skills. I use Logic Pro to like do all of my audiobook stuff because that's what
Mhm.
I learned with my degree. And so I'm in the same software even. My voice has changed, my songwriting has changed because I'm reading so many books. I'm reading so much creative content. It's changed the way I do my art as well. And so I don't know, it's really opened my eyes doing this job to just embracing other artistic avenues and how that can impact your art. And so it makes it busy. Like right now I am producing a double album of music for myself while still like full-time audiobook narrating, so it can
Wow.
be a lot. It can be a lot, but it works hand in hand, and I'm just like, okay, Lord, get me through this.
Yep, yep. But let's talk about your music. What is your music like? How would you describe it to someone?
Sure. That has been my struggle because of my influences that I mentioned before are just like across the board. And then I got really into jazz in college. So that like just
Mhm.
widened the spectrum. I like to say that it's on like a triangular spectrum between like 2000s pop, classic rock, and jazz standards. And so that usually ends up in kind of a neo soul. I like cinematic pop is a term that's coming up a little bit more, and I think some of my music goes that way, but not all of it. And that's where I'm like, I just write to the emotion
Mhm.
and use the genre that's the right tool for that. But yeah, I do it all and I produce it all now. I engineer everything is very individual. So
Oh, that's so cool. What is one of your favorite songs that you've ever written?
oh boy, they all have like different places in my heart. I've described it once as like having all of these different outfits in your wardrobe.
Mhm.
Like there are different parts of life that they symbolize. And even though you might not wear one every day, it's like, wow, that was a really special time.
Mm,
And it
mhm.
it represents a certain part of my life. And I think right now I say that one of my favorites that I've done is Heart's Mirage, just because it's one of my favorite metaphors I've ever written of like when you're on the quest for true love or
Mm,
like
mhm.
the person, your partner in life. And okay, how do I stop myself from making bad decisions or like settling for the wrong thing and balancing that uh with like what I want out of life, what I feel like the Lord has called me to and all of that, and having this mirage in front of you that you can't quite see but is coming.
Mm.
And yeah, it's a special one to me right now. That probably won't always be the answer, but that one for sure.
Where can people find your music?
It's on all the streaming platforms, just my name, Talon David. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, just all of them. There's like 60 of them now.
Awesome.
So
So if you say you can't find it, you're not telling the truth.
you're
You-
spelling my name wrong.
you're
That's what it is.
you're spelling the name wrong. Well, okay, and we just have to take a second because your name is so cool.
Oh, thanks, man.
When I was looking for audiobook narrators, I was drawn to your name immediately, and then of course I heard your voice and I was like, "Oh, I'm very very interested." But why did your parents name you Talon?
Thanks, Mom and Dad. You're getting me work.
Yes, see?
I love it. Yeah, they wanted a name that I wouldn't be made fun of for. My dad grew up with the name Stacy, and so it was very a sensitive
Mm,
topic for him. So he was like coming up with any and every nickname that like a middle school boy could call you. And with Talon, they were like, wow, that's cool. We think this is good. And then
mhm.
they wrapped it around the verse in Isaiah that talks about you will fly on wings like eagles, you will walk and not grow faint, and all of that. And they just like, that's a great symbol that we love. And you know, they're artistic people too. So they figured I'd run with that, I guess. And I'm like, yeah, guys, you gave me my stage name, you gave me my icebreaker, everything all in
Yep.
this name.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's so cool. I've never met a Talon, and it's just it's beautiful and powerful, and like you said, it's not something. I love how your dad went through and thought, okay, how could people make fun of her with this name? Like, you
absolutely.
know, how could people? And it's really I don't know, it just exudes at just this positive energy, and it just goes
Yeah.
with your care, just the way you act. I just love it so much. It's so
I'm so
cool.
glad. I'm so glad.
Uh,
Thank you.
So, with all that being said, so let's jump in and let's talk about dissonance. And again,
Yeah,
I just want to thank you for I'm like getting emotional talking about it, but it's just the work that you did, because I went through so much to live it, then to write it. And when we got to this point, you know, for a long time I thought I'll narrate it myself. And I feel like I could have done
right.
that, and I would have done a good job, but it just got to the point where I felt like it feels really really personal, and I felt it was, you know, it's hit started to win awards, and then at this point I had thought, okay, I made it this far, I really want it to be professional. And yeah, can I do a good job? Sure, but I want someone who, like, they've been doing this, and the consistency with the character voices, and you just
Yeah,
like sold this. And so I would love to talk about what was it like for you. You know, what is your process when you're like, okay, I'm going to take on this book, right? That this is, I'm going
right.
to do this is and then what's your process of preparing for that? But then also what was the experience of preparing for my book specifically as well?
Yeah. Well, I love that we had a call beforehand. I thought I typically that's not necessary with a book, but I think with this one, just because of the nature of it, was really nice. Also, so I could kind of get more of a handle on how you speak yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and we have kind of a similar timbre, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. But you definitely have a different accent than I do, and so to just click into that and be like, okay, this is kind of her tone and everything. For audiobook narration, I think of it as a little different than like acting out a part,
Mm-hmm.
because the most important thing with narration is tone, the author's tone, and that informs every other decision you make. If you're just playing one role, then it's it's just about that character. You don't have a big picture view at all. It's that's the director's role and everything, and you just zero in on the inner life of that character. But an audiobook narrator doesn't need that. It's more about trying to capture the tone of what you, the author, were trying to get across. And that's at least what I try to get sort of an intuition for. And I'm so glad that you liked what I was doing with that. And yeah, I for dissonance specifically, it was definitely different than anything else, because when I do character voices, typically I look at what's in the text and how you describe their voices, and then also how I imagine them being said. But these are actual people that said this. Whereas before, there's that more suspended reality of, oh, you know, I can say this because this is how I've heard this type of line be said in a movie this way, and this is what comes to mind. This, I was really interested to see how specific you were going to be with how I needed to say certain lines. And it's like, okay, if she put this specific dialogue in here, I'm sure it rings a certain way in her head. And how are we going to have a bit of like a jostle about how this needs to be said, and how I was like, wow, I really am interested to see how this is going to play out. Um, but I loved you gave me like the Google Drive of all of those voices of your family, and which was really nice. But I think you also had a great like flexibility with it as
Mm.
well. Obviously, I didn't know how these things were said in real time. I didn't know how that would affect you as well. To have to hear all of these things,
And that was the
you
other
know,
reason why I stepped out of it and said I'd like somebody else to do it, because imagining
yeah,
myself saying some of these things, it just felt too close, too personal to me.
Yeah.
And it was also, I don't know if I've said this to you, but it was so healing to hear it read in
Mm.
somebody else's voice, because one of the issues that um, survivors that have experienced what I've experienced have is we have trouble separating ourselves from the traumatized part of ourselves. So,
Wow.
like, stepping away. I mean, that's the thing is, right? Like, if we had not been groomed by a person to believe a certain thing about them, we could see them clearly, or much more
Mm-hmm.
clearly, just like an outsider could. But because this person developed a relationship with us, yeah, it's like, even today, I still have to work to see this person as
Yeah.
with this objective sort of way, and to set aside all of the things that made me look at him in a way that was not true. That's not who he really was. And so to
Yeah.
listen to somebody else reading it, I could
Mm.
separate myself. It created this separation where I'm listening to it going, no, don't listen to him. Like, don't, like, as if I'm an outsider, and that I'm like, I'm a character, I'm a fictional character, in the book. And
Wow.
so it's really, I cannot thank you enough. It was very healing. It's more than just you reading that book, and
Mm.
the performance of it and the art of it. It was like legitimately healing for me.
I love that, and I'm honestly so humbled that. How did you find me, by the way? Because you just emailed me, I think, or messaged me through ACX,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, okay, sure, I'll
Well,
I'll narrate this.
I will tell you so a short little version of the story is just, yep, I went through ACX, and the way that I found ACX was I became interested in audiobook narration, and I just have so many things
Mm,
on the table. And I maybe I auditioned for a couple of things, and of course, like, it takes a lot to break in. You were so lucky that you had that in where somebody
it was so random.
gave your audition tape to somebody and said, yeah, this is going to be great. So I was already signed up through there, so I knew where to start looking once I knew I wanted somebody else to do it. And so they have
Mm-hmm.
like this ACX approved, people. And
Mm-hmm.
I came across well, first off, again, your name popped up, and I was like, that is a badass name, and I've got to see what she can do. And so I clicked on it, and I just loved what I heard. And it came down to you and a person who had actually won like multiple awards. I've never said this to you. Like, you're learning all of this right now in this moment, right? But this
Yes, I
came down.
am.
You are. This is like real time stuff right now, right? Because I think right now, you have not won any audiobook narration awards, right?
Nope.
So, but I
I've
think
gone
it's
under.
coming. I think it's coming, baby. I think it's coming. And so it was between you and a woman who, she was very good, and she had won awards and done a ton of books.
For sure.
And honestly, what it came down to was, and I had my husband listen to both. I didn't tell him who was who. I just handed him the audition clips from you and the other woman. And he said he liked you. He said he knew right away that he wanted you to do it, because he said she's taking more risks. There's more vulnerability in what she's doing. Like, there's more dynamic contrast to what she's doing. And I really like that. And whereas for me, I have to be honest, it was hard for me that you were taking the risks and the
Oh.
vulnerability, because to me that felt vulnerable for me. Like, it felt so weird to hear you talking like my 14-year-old self, and then talking like him. And so for me, I almost wanted to play it safe and have the narrator
Ah.
that was like sitting more evenly and didn't take as many risks. But it's the same thing with but he was so right. And as soon as he said it, it was like I was almost mad at him, because I was like, I knew
Oh.
you were right. I knew you were right, because it was hard for me. Just like when I
Mm.
got the cover done for the book, that felt very vulnerable, but it was the
Which is a
right
great cover,
cover.
by the way.
Thank
I think
you.
it's amazing.
Thank you. And again, I have to give my husband so much credit, because he actually picked the title of the book. I told
Mm.
him I was looking for a book that had a word, like, I was looking for a title that had meaning. It was one word. I knew it was going to be one word, and it was
Mm-hmm.
going to have meaning in both psychology and music. And one day he said, I know what your book's going to be. It's going to be dissonance. And I was like, you are a genius. That's exactly what it's going to be. And then when I reached out to cover book artists, she gave me all these concepts, and the one that is there felt the most vulnerable to me, and so I
Mm.
wanted to reject it. Like, there was something in me that wanted to run from it, because I just, it felt so raw to me, and I was like, oh
Mm.
my god, like I just and so that's why I needed somebody else's opinion on it. And my husband right away said, it's that one, that's the cover design you're going to go with. And I was like, you're so right. And so in all of these cases, he just read that so well, and I'm so glad he
Mm.
did, because once I settled into the idea that it was going to be so vulnerable, and that you were reading it not as safe as the other person, and that was going to be better. That was going to pay off. I was so, so happy that that's what
Mm.
happened. And it was just fabulous. And I love that it was read again. If you didn't know if it was a memoir, you might think it was a novel. You might think this is like, this didn't really happen. And there's some pretty wild stuff in there that is real. Like, it's like, how did these things line up? Talk about God and the universe and timing. I mean, I, and that was part of what made it so confusing. Like, for me, in the
Yeah.
moment of what was happening, is like, what do you want from me, God? Like, literally, I say that in the book. Like, what do you want from me? So I'm just so glad that this turned out the way it did, because like I said, once it was settled that that's what was going to happen, I knew, like, all right, this is going to be amazing. And it really is amazing. Truly, Talon, it's amazing. So thank you so much
Oh,
for that. Yeah.
thank you so much. Wow. Well, like when you had mentioned that it was, I think you told me it was more of a narrative format
Yeah.
memoir before I even auditioned. And so, like, to me, hearing that, I was like, oh, she wants a more emotional read.
Mm-hmm.
If it's more a narrative, then there's more emotional dynamics than a typical memoir. So that's what I thought you wanted.
And it is what I wanted. It is, but it's like, that's why I had to always, it's hard when you're so close to it. And
Oh, I
Eh,
bet.
so that's why I needed somebody else's opinion, and it was the right one. It was absolutely the right one all day long. And the other thing was,
Amazing.
I think it's easy to lean into a person who, like, oh, they've won awards, right? Oh, well, clearly they're going to do great with this. And so to choose the person that hasn't maybe achieved on paper yet the accolades of the other narrator, but I was like, no, but this woman is going to be an award winning narrator. This is what's going to, because I feel like what you did with my book is award winning. Like, and I have an award winning book. So I'm going to
Yes,
say
you
it.
do.
So you have become an award winning narrator by proxy. That's what we're
By
going to say. By
association.
association.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I would love to talk about your experience of reading the book, and what, because you knew going in, before you had read it, you knew what it was
Hmm.
about, but you didn't
Yes.
know the twists and turns of it, or what it was really going to be. And I'm just wondering, what was that experience like for you? Let's just start there, because I mean, I have a few questions, but we're just going to
Okay.
start with that one.
Well, I think, again, the title of the book, that feeling of dissonance is throughout the entire thing, and it gets definitely um more potent as you go along, and you're like, wait a minute, is this right? Is it wrong? Is it just misunderstood? Is it wrong? But it's wrong. But it's right. But it's so, like, you're with you through all of that. And it really does. I'm thinking about like dissonant chords in music. And when you hit like the diminished chord, and it's like some of these notes sound right in this key, but one of them doesn't. And it's just something has to resolve. Where's the
Hmm.
resolution here? And that's what you're waiting for throughout this entire book, and I think is why it has done so well. Is this is such a relatable feeling that we feel in life, and narrating it, I knew going in that this was going to be one of the most important projects that I had. This isn't a retelling of Cinderella. This is someone's. I do that a lot. That's why I mentioned that. This is a memoir of someone's life, and like real issues that are very hard to articulate when you're in them. And so I knew how much time you had put into this. I knew I needed to, I knew there was a lot of responsibility on me. And so I went about this like, okay, I was in prayer a lot, actually, as I was narrating this and prepping. I was like, okay, Lord, how do I say this in the way that is, I don't know the situation. I don't know exactly how this was said. How do I say this in the way that gets across your purpose with this? That's the most authentic, that isn't too acty about
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
but is emotional, and it gets across to the people who are going to listen to this that need healing. Um, how do I say this? One of the wonderful quirks about being an audiobook narrator is that you get to narrate everyone's dialogue.
Mhm.
But where that becomes really difficult is when you have to narrate like a perpetrator's dialogue.
Mhm.
And just wanting to like internally vomit sometimes as I'm like narrating this and just being like, okay, Lord, we're just going to take a deep breath and get this out, and say these lines. That it was very difficult, even as I'm like rethinking about it and remembering. I'm like, wow, that's like, it's really difficult. But I knew that I was feeling like a sort of compassion with you, having written it, that you had a similar emotion when you were writing it, probably, of just like having to put it down in the world.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it felt very purposeful and resonant to work on. I don't know if there's anything specifically that you want to hear more about prep, but
No, it's I just wondered what that process was like for you, and um I really appreciate your ability to sit with the feeling, the discomfort that you were feeling, and like you said you wanted to vomit, like, and I don't blame you, having to read his lines. And
I have some funny bloopers.
do you?
Yeah. I'd say something and be like, God, gosh.
I was like, God, this guy sucks. Like, what do I even doing? Well, and as a Christian, as you're speaking, you're talking about God, and it's very clear that you have a deep sense of faith. And I think one of the things I struggle with, especially in the beginning, was how do I write this in a way that is honest and doesn't
Right.
feel because growing up in for me in an evangelical church, we hear all these things about the way you speak and the way you use your tongue, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
blanking on the scripture, but that like the tongue is a weapon, like, and
A
it can be
double-edged
used, it's a
sword,
double-edged
right?
sword. And
Yeah.
so and also growing up with this idea that sex is so, we don't talk about this, we don't talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
that I had to be able to get through all those layers of coding that I had growing up and all those messages and say, yeah, I am going to talk about this really difficult stuff, and I'm going to be explicit about some things, not disgusting, not salacious, but I'm going to be explicit and clear in what happened. And I think it's interesting that you said that you prayed over how to say things, because I have told people I prayed over every page, because
Mm.
when I talk to people and I explain to them that there is sexually explicit material in the book and that can be very difficult, that I tell them there's a reason why I wrote every line that I did. And it wasn't to be salacious. And I did pray to God, like, should I put this in or leave this out? And there had to be a reason why I did it. And
Yeah.
I feel good. And I feel, even though it's difficult, I stand by what I did, because the other reason I did it was I thought of all of the girls and women and boys and men, like all any gender that has ever had
Mm-hmm.
to sit and report an assault, or even sit with a parent or tell somebody that they love that something has happened to them, and
Yeah.
to have to explain it or say words that you've been taught are dirty words. You're not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
say that. And I was like, I'm going to say those difficult words for those
Yeah.
people, for those victims, for those survivors, because we're looking at the wrong things here. Like, yes, the act of um of the assault and all of those things is one thing, but when it comes down to it, what it's about is about power and control and
Mm-hmm.
suppression of who you are. And it's a thief, is what it is. It steals from you. And that's what I wanted to be able to show. And I wanted to just blow out of the water all those ideas of like, well, you can't say that, well, you shouldn't, as a Christian or as a woman of faith, you need to keep it clean. And it's like, this is my
Oh,
life. This is
look at
my
all the
life.
stories in the Bible, though. Like, show me a clean one, please. Like, I'd love to hear it.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah. So
yeah, but I loved when you were talking with the officers and stuff in the book and speaking about like the legal definitions of rape and penetration and all of that. It's like nobody knows this stuff. Like I myself was like, wow, like I've never heard the legal definitions for this before
mhm.
because no one talks about it, even in a legal capacity. Everyone's like, oh, well, did this happen? You
Yep.
know, it's like, and it's like, come on, like these are some of the most subtly deep wounds that can be inflicted on someone. And I thought that was such a potent part of this book, is really confronting maybe preconceived notions I had about the criminal aspect of this as opposed to a moral aspect and what the differences were. And um yeah, that was really interesting. And I can imagine was difficult again to put on the page.
It really made me wrestle with my own idea of the way that I view, sex and talking about those things. And
Mhm.
and that it really transformed me in so many different ways. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
like now I'm like, okay, well, God made sex, people. We need to stop putting it on a pedestal or acting like we're afraid of it. Like we need,
Right.
because I think that's how it gains so much power. I think, and that's, we're
Mhm.
seeing clearly right now in our society, this like sort of unraveling of how it's been used to harm other people. And
Yes.
so I think the best thing we can do is stop treating it like it's like some taboo subject and just be like, I mean, that's how we create life, yes, but that's how we connect,
Mhm.
and I think when I think of sex and sin, I think about like what my abuser did to me, which is he used it to control me, he used it to have power over me, he warped it, and so I just really appreciate your willingness to step into that space and to say those words and to pray over them, because I feel like, yeah, they needed to be said, and to be said by someone that's trusting and that is reading them with love and not judgment, because
Mm.
that is huge. That's a huge
Oh, I
part of
bet.
this. So um, as an aside, this might be like a funny question to you if you feel comfortable answering.
Sure.
But who is your favorite character in the book? So let's treat it like it's a let's
Oh.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, wow. Um,
Or who did you feel connected to, or who drew, like, you can take this however you want.
interesting. Well, I mean, I can't get past the character of Megan because it's first person, so I feel like it's like,
So
well,
beyond. Well, wait. Let's stop for a second. How did you relate to the character of Megan then? We'll start there, but then we can move beyond me because I'm really wondering who beyond the scope of the main, the protagonist.
sure.
But what were you feeling with my character?
I wow. Well, I love how it's formatted. It was a great narration challenge. I haven't even touched on this yet. It was a
Mm,
great narration challenge to go between the different ages. I was so excited to tackle that. I loved reading Young Megan so much because you and I have a lot in common when we were that age, and
mm,
being so interested in music, being academically motivated, and being um yeah, just like the kid that's wanting to do the very best and is really
yep.
excited about things, maybe was a bit pretentious at points. So I was like, oh, man, this is so good. I really loved reading Ian in the book, but I believe Dan is your
Yep.
husband's real name, and he had such great lines. I mean, the the conversation that you alluded to at the very beginning of the book
Mm-hmm.
that we finally get to about the middle where you confess to him what happened. And I just, it was wonderful to read those lines and to be like, wow, she does have some support. Granted, it's a bit angry
Mm-hmm.
right now, but
Yeah.
it's some support that's gonna stick by her. And um yeah, I really enjoyed reading his lines because I think I
Mm.
needed that too. It's been like, okay, she does have some support. I don't need to like reach out and be like, hey. Okay.
And you did so beautifully with him. I mean, I think that those were the moments that made me tear up, like on my first listen through of everything with you. It's just, I thought you read him with so much love and care,
Mhm.
and you could feel how complicated it was on his end and how he was trying so hard, and he wasn't always perfect at it because there literally is no book. Now there's a book on this, but there's no, but where,
Right.
there's no book to help you. How do you help your wife through this and try to
Right.
understand it? And it's just, and so it was just so beautiful. And also, like, there were so few things I had to give you to ask you to change. I mean, that's the thing. You're looking at a book that's however many pages long with so much dialogue, and all you had to
Yeah.
go off of was, I gave you some videos, right, to listen to how
Mhm.
we speak, and the rest was all within the context of what I had written. And I don't think I asked you to change a single thing about the most difficult dialogue scene. I think you just nailed it right away, and you weren't even there. And
Thank the
it was
Lord.
like, wow. And yeah, I mean, was everything in the exact same tone? No, but it was pretty close. And the things that it wasn't, and I had to sit with this too for a while, that it was okay that it wasn't,
Mm.
right? Like, it was okay that it didn't sound the exact same, because you were still able to convey it in a way that it could reach people, and that you were still getting to the core of it. And I think you also saw that that was what was hard for me, talking about, going back to where we were talking about vulnerability, and how
Mhm.
that for me was a hard thing, right? That the thing that was most effective sometimes was very vulnerable for me, was I had asked you to adjust, or I asked you the question, should you make Chris's lines less seductive? Should you tone it down?
Right.
Right? I asked you,
Oh, I remember that
like,
now.
should you tone it down? And it was like, no, because I'm sure that that is what it sounded like. And it's just so hard to confront that. And it was right.
Right.
Your intuition on this was right. But as a person who had someone narrate their book, this is some of the challenges I faced as well as an artist. And
Yeah.
we're speaking from an artist perspective, right?
Mhm.
To keep it back to that. So,
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to sit with it and be flexible with what I was able to do, because I was a little concerned just from learning that it was a memoir, that it was like, oh, is she going to be really specific about how this needs to be said? And it's very difficult to communicate that, just number one. And I so thank you using me as a partner in this audiobook creation. And that it's really wonderful because I was just taking what you had written and like
mhm.
going off of my interpretation, but so much of it was already in the text itself and the dynamic of that. um and with Chris's lines, I to me it was kind of, I think, going back to, I guess, why you chose me in the first place, is that to add that emotional component, add that, like, how am I reading this in my head? And how do I think this would have been said? Which, to me, to read it like that, because he's talking to a child this way, that set off alarm bells more for me, which I think if we read it too normally, then the alarm bells aren't going off as much. And I think it's important that the alarm bells do go off at certain parts. And I think that
Mm,
one specifically was like, if I was just going to read this normally as me, then
mhm.
I was like, but I would never say this like that. Like this, there's some sort of manipulation here, and it's, yeah, I those were hard to do for sure. And because you were mentioning before about writing like explicit content and stuff, and I don't read erotica, I don't read anything like that, but I don't have a problem with explicit content when it's used for storytelling, when it's not gratuitous. And this, it's all about the tone, just like everything else that a narrator does, and an
Mm-hmm.
author does for that matter. So I think, I don't remember if I read through these scenes before. I don't think I did,
Not
before
before you
accepting.
agreed. No, you accepted. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. Like, you accepted before reading them.
Yeah.
Can
And
I
I,
can I share
sure,
something with you
yeah.
too that is interesting is that in
Hmm.
searching for a narrator, there were a few people who did ask up front for some um for the most explicit content. And this just tells you the world we're living in is some of them said, I can't do this because it feels too close to home for me. This reflects too much of my own experiences. So that, yeah, wow, right? And that really,
Wow.
so that was early on in the search process of just sort of like, okay, is this is even a person that's so, I just wanted to let you know that that was a thing. So again,
Wow.
just being able to tackle that and from a person of faith doing it instead of like running away and being like, I can't do this, I can't read this, it's too difficult, I'm going to look away. And that as Christians we can lean into the truth about things and not be like, nope, nope, can't do that, that's too.
Yeah.
So I really yeah, I really appreciate that. And I have sort of like I have a technique, like a selfish question that's a technique related thing, which is
Okay.
how do you do male voices? How do you approach them? Because I was like, wow, she is so good at this. And
Oh man.
please let me in on some secrets, like as an
You want to
artist.
know a secret?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, with male voices, I think trying at first it's just getting rid of the preconceived notions we have about like men being so different from women, and that,
Mm-hmm.
like expressing things differently. And so a lot of times my male voice is just like my own voice, but the dynamic, the pitch difference between it is just a little bit more concise. It's
Yeah.
like this, and then it's a bit more monotone,
Mm-hmm.
and I go up, and then sometimes it goes up like this. It's like whoa, and then down, and then yeah, but you sit kind of like this, and it's really not that different than a female voice, but I just add more
Mm-hmm.
sibilance with mine, and I don't know, it's all about communication
Mm-hmm.
and communicating different emotions. And I think a lot of male characters, the ones that I have narrated, a lot of it has to do with like strength and protection. And so like when you try to embody that in a voice, it usually sits a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
These are kind of abstract concepts, but it really does inform like typically where I sit with it. And then a lot of it is kind of theory of relativity as well. I will sometimes, when I'm in a dialogue scene with a male and female character, I put my male voice down here, and then maybe I pitch my voice just a little higher. And so it's just
Mm.
like a little higher like this. So this seems like a lot more resonant.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh, that's so
so,
cool.
right?
It's so cool.
So that's my little nerd moment.
Oh, I love that. Well, I just love that. Yeah, because I was like listening to it because as a voice coach, as a person who I
Yeah.
loves working with the voice, it's like okay, I'm trying to. I mean, I could feel myself like I'm trying to figure out where this and this and there's nuance to what you do. The way you start sentences sometimes it's almost like there's a breath behind it or like a cry behind it or like I'm just telling you I notice all those things. I'm hearing all those things and
This
I
is so great to hear.
yeah, I just like almost like a growl into something or like it's just or a vocal fry. There's all these things that you do that are so cool. So cool.
Oh, thanks. Well, from a singing perspective as well, a lot of times with guy voices, if you want to growl, it's vocal fry, and especially
Mm-hmm.
ending it.
Mm-hmm.
If I find like, oh, I've gone too high pitched in the middle of this sentence, then I'll just end it kind of like, yeah. And then like dig into that fry. I'm like, oh my gosh. Also using your diaphragm. So when I do like deeper male voices,
Yeah.
I can get more if I really like clutch my core in like this, and then I can get like much deeper in my voice than I could if I was
Oh, if you're
just like right
clutching,
here.
like you're oh my
Yeah.
oh whoa, that works. I just did
Well,
it. I like clutched and it went down. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Okay, see, this is why I had to
Yeah.
know. I didn't know. So I'm actually I'm going to be narrating an audiobook.
Good, 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 good.
And I will have to do a similar thing where I will have to, and it is a survivor book, and I'm really,
Yeah.
really excited to do it, and I'm so honored to do it. And you are my inspiration for this, and like that's why that's why I said I'm selfishly asking right now because
Yeah.
please tell me what you just did, and because I want to be able to honor the woman's book that I'm doing, and it's on as the
Mm-hmm.
same topic, and so I really appreciate your insight on that. Is there anything that you want to share that you haven't been able to share? Any question you wish I would have asked you that I haven't asked you?
Um, I think you've been really thorough. I think, just to reiterate again how thankful I am to have been a part of this book and how seemingly random it was at the beginning from
Mm,
my perspective, but how I was like, wow, the the Lord, I did feel like the Lord had equipped me to do this. To like be able to empathize with you, not quite exactly how what your experience was, but that, um, just feelings of self abuse and all of that, where it's like I can empathize with this, but I also can say this in a way, and I can read these words in a way where it's not going to affect a personal experience of mine.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's so interesting that those other narrators, like they just weren't the ones set up for this book.
Yep.
And I think it's a wonderful testament to like what we really have been equipped for a purpose in this world. And I am so thankful to have been able to partner with you on this book, and I'm sure it's going to win all the awards.
All the
This
awards.
audiobook,
All the
it's going to be
awards.
so good.
Now,
Yeah, and
do you submit things for awards on your end? Like, how does that work?
I do nothing. I honestly, I've been busy enough to where I really don't have time to look into that. I just recently uh, became a part of the APA, which I think does the Audios Awards, which is
Mm.
happening in March. It's just so expensive
Mm. It does
to
cost
go
money
to.
to enter things and to be a part of them, but
Yeah.
I guess I just want to tell you that you have what it takes to win the
Oh,
awards. Like you
thank
have
you.
it. So I just and you don't have to win awards to do good work. I just want you to know that you're just great, and I just want you to be able, in whatever way, whether it's awards or through dialogue like this or just testimony from your clients, that you feel that
Yeah.
love and that appreciation because you are really good at what you do,
Thank you.
and you're helping in ways that you have no idea that you're helping. And so, yeah,
Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot.
yeah, thank you for being here.